Okay, brothers and sisters, we want to say Shalom, Barakatah Yahweh, Barakatah Yahweh Shai. Um, Shalom Wa, Barak, Akim, Shalom Wa, Barak, Abwai. And we want to thank Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai today. And we're going to bring forth this wonderful lesson. We also want to say Tawab Yawam, and double honors to the elders and the apostles. Salutations to the Akim that's pushing this truth and sincerity. And last but not least, all praises and glorification to Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai. And we're going to talk about the serpent, basically the serpent. Okay? The serpent. This lesson is going to be titled The Serpent for you brothers and sisters. Okay? Now we're going to go into the definition of serpent, and we're going to define that to see what does the word serpent means. Now, brothers and sisters, if you can see it on display on the 42-inch flat screen, we're going to show you exactly what serpent means. Okay, it says serpent. The TV is not turned all the way up, but it says serpent. All right? And it says a serpent basically is a noun. A noun. And a noun is a person, place, or a thing. A serpent can be looked at two different ways. The first way is basically it can be looked at as being literal. Okay, it can be looked at as being literal, such as a large snake, an actual snake, rattlesnake, let's see, a copperhead, cobra, king cobra, grass snake, rat snake. It can be literary. That's the first term or the first way to define serpent. It can be looked at as literal. And number two, it can be looked at as a sly or treacherous person, especially one who exploits a position of trust in order to betray it. So it can be looked at two different ways, the word serpent. Number one is a large snake, literal snake, slithering creature. And number two, a sly, treacherous person, especially one who exploits a power of trust in order to betray it. So we're going to be dealing with this on today to define serpent, brothers and sisters. And we're going to open up the word. Let's choose a verse. Let's see. Let's take a look at Hosea 12 and 10. That's Hosea 12 and 10, brothers and sisters. It says, I have also spoken by the prophets, and I have multiplied visions and used similitudes by the ministry of the prophets. So he tells you in Hosea 12 and 10 that I have spoken by the prophets, and I have multiplied visions and used similitudes by the ministry of the prophets. So the Most High tells you how he speaks throughout the Bible. He said that he spoke to the prophets by simply using similitudes. Now, what is a similitude? A similitude is the quality or state of being similar to something. Like resemblance, similarity, likeness, sameness, or comparison. That is known as a similitude. It's basically the quality or the state of being similar to something. A comparison. Now, another term that defines similitude, dealing with Hosea 12 and 10, when he says in the 10th verse out of Hosea 12, they spoke by his prophets and multiplied visions and used similitudes. Another word to define that is a parable. Because Yahweh Shai, who the world knows as Jesus Christ, spoke in many parables concerning the Gospels. He spoke in parables. And parables is synonymous to similitudes, pursuing the Hosea 12 and 10. So he says, basically, I have also spoken by the prophets and have multiplied visions and used similitudes by the ministry of the prophets. So this is how he used his ministry. This is how the Most High basically orchestrated, and this is how the Bible was written through the prophets. Some things the prophets saw in visions was known in a form of similitude or parable. And that's why the Bible sometimes can be frustrating to understand. It can be difficult to reason and to break down. All right. Another thing, like I said, that is related to a similitude is a parable, is an illustrated story. And like Paul the Apostle used the term, he used allegory. That's what Paul the Apostle used. He used the word allegory. So you have similitude, parable, allegory, all those are the same, in the same area. And things of that nature. An allegory is basically a representation of an abstract, a spiritual meaning through a concrete or material form. That's what allegory means. Let's go to Galatians 4:24. Now let's not forget, the lesson is dealing with defining the term serpent. How serpent is used throughout the Bible. Is it a literal snake? Is the serpent resembles an enemy? Does it relate to, wisdom, understanding? We will see. So let's go to Galatians 4:24. It says, which things are an allegory, for these are the two covenants. The one from the Mount Sinai, which was the old covenant. It says, the one from Mount Sinai, which generate to bondage, which is a God. So in Galatians 4:24, it just speaks of Paul relates a similitude or a parable to an allegory, and that's Galatians 4:24. Read that one more time. Which things are an allegory, for these are the two covenants. The one from the Mount Sinai, which generate to bondage, which is a God. So you can see that Paul used the term allegory. He didn't use similitude like Hosea 12:10 stated, or he didn't use parable. He used allegory. And all those are related. Similitude, parables, and allegory. And they're going to tie in with this serpent, brothers and sisters. It's going to tie in with the term serpent. Okay? So let's just keep in mind, brothers and sisters, we're going to go into several illustrations and viewpoints dealing with the word serpent. S-E-R-P-E-N-T. Now we're going to show you the first symbolic way that the Bible describes the serpent. We're going to show you the first way. We're going to show you the first way the Bible describes the serpent as being, basically, the first way the Bible describes the serpent is being a sly, treacherous person, a cunning or a treacherous person, a person of mischief. We're going to go into that and show you that's the first way how the Bible describes the serpent. All right, so let's go in the book of Genesis, brothers and sisters. Let's go in the book of Genesis. All right. We will take a look at Genesis, the third chapter, because actually the third chapter speaks of the fall of man. Okay. We will start with Genesis 3:1. It reads, now the serpent was more subtle than any beast of the field, which the Lord God had made. So it starts off to say in Genesis 3:1, the serpent was more subtle than any beast of the field. Meaning, basically, this is not a literal snake that Genesis 3:1 is talking about here in the first verse. It's not a literal snake. This serpent is known as an allegory, similitude, or a parable. It's a treacherous person. It's a sly or treacherous person. One who exploits a position of trust in order to betray it. That's what it's talking about. But a lot of people misunderstand the Bible, because when they go in Genesis, the third chapter, brothers and sisters, when they go into it, many of you have been led to believe that Genesis, the third chapter, is speaking about a literal snake, and it's not speaking about a literal snake. Actually, it's speaking about the so-called white man in the beginning of time when he had pigment within his flesh. Okay, that's the so-called white man when in his early stages, at the beginning of time, before he lost his pigment, before he lost his coloration. All right, he was that serpent, that treacherous, subtle person. Okay, that's what it's talking about, brothers and sisters. And keep in mind, just keep in mind that the serpent, the word serpent refers to definition 2 refers to a sly, treacherous person, one who especially exploits a position of trust in order to betray it. Someone who betrays trust, someone who goes against trust. someone who deceives or tricks someone, someone who lies to someone, someone who brainwashes someone. That particular person is known as the serpent. Genesis 3:1. Now the serpent was more subtle than any beast of the field. The beasts of the field in Genesis 3:1 are talking about nations of the earth. All right. He was more, the so-called white man in the beginning of time was more treacherous and cunning than any other nation that was in that region in the Garden of Eden. All right. So we're gonna show you, brothers and sisters, that this serpent is referring to a trickery or treacherous person, which is the so-called white man in the beginning of time. Now, let's go to Revelation 12:7. We'll go to that, Revelation 12:7, and we'll go back to Genesis 3:1 to show you that this is a literal man that is trickery and treacherous and who exploits the position of trust in order to betray it. Revelation 12:9. And the great dragon was cast out, the old serpent, called the devil and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world. So it tells you right here, the great dragon was cast out. That great dragon refers to the Edomites, okay? So-called white race of people. Okay, that's the great red dragon, because when you read Genesis 25:25, it tells you that Esau came out red and hairy. And we're going to focus on red because red in the Hebrew simply means Adawam. So Esau's name was changed to Edom, which goes to Adawam in the Hebrew, which simply means red. And this also in Genesis chapter 12, it's a similitude, it's a parable, it's an allegory. So Genesis chapter 12 also talks about metaphorical viewpoint of the so-called white man as being the great red dragon, which was called an old serpent. This is Revelation 12:9. So he was called an old serpent because the same old white man that's causing hell on this earth was in the beginning of time in the Garden of Eden, man. And that's why it's known as the old serpent in Revelation 12:9, which is called a devil. When you look up the word devil in the Greek, it takes you to diabolos, which simply means to deceive, a deceiver. And like I told you, that ties in with serpent, because a serpent, definition 2 for a serpent is a sly, treacherous person. The same as the devil, which in Greek is diabolos, which is a sly, treacherous person, which is a deceiver. And the so-called white man have deceived blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans, which are the Israelites, for many years. So he's known as the great red dragon. He also known as that serpent that was in the beginning of time in the Garden of Eden before his pigment, his coloration was stripped. And he also known as the devil and Satan. Now why I say it's devil and Satan in Revelation 12:9? Because the word devil meaning diabolos, which means to deceive, and the word Satan, which means to oppose him. Because he opposes what the Most High demands righteously. All the righteous order, Satan opposed. So did we not go over the serpent definition too? It says a sly, treacherous person, especially one who exploits a position of trust in order to betray it. So when you betray something, basically what you do, if you betray one of your best friends, basically what are you doing by betraying one of your best friends? You basically is opposing him. That's what the word Satan means. The reason why they call him devil and Satan in Revelation 12:9, because the so-called white man, he mimics the works of Satan. He impersonates the works of Satan. Okay, he's like the physical counterpart of Satan. All right, which deceiveth the world. See, the word deceive goes back to serpent. This is Revelation 12:9, say he's deceiving the world. Okay, that goes back to the serpent, because a serpent is a sly, treacherous person, and he deceives. So this is just letting you see that this literal, this serpent at the beginning of time, which beguiled Eve, was an actual man. He was the so-called white man before his pigment was stripped from him, and before he came back in another life to come, he was the so-called white man at the Garden of Eden. All right. Now let's go to Matthew 10:16. Dealing with serpent. This lesson is dealing with different viewpoints of the word serpent. Behold, I send you forth as sheep. This is Yahushua speaking, who the world knows as Jesus Christ. Behold, I send you forth as sheep in the midst of wolves. Be ye therefore wise as serpents and harmless as doves. Because the Most High in Matthew chapter 10, verse 16, the Most High is using wisdom as a comparison to a serpent, because that takes you back to Genesis 3 and 1. That's why the Most High tells the children of Israel, he tells you blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans, when you go out basically with this gospel, you have to know how to utilize the gospel. When you go out with this truth, you're supposed to be what? You're supposed to be wise as serpents and harmless as doves. You're supposed to know how to speak the Bible in difficult situations without causing chaos. All right? So he says, behold, I send you forth as sheep in the midst of wolves. Be therefore wise as serpents and harmless as doves. So he's using wisdom in the comparison to a serpent. Just like Genesis 3 and 1 is doing the same thing. That was Matthew chapter 10, verse 16. Let's go back to Genesis 3 and 1.